Aloha, and welcome to An Oral History, The Life of Calvin Say. Last time we talked about some reoccurring and contemporary issues, and today we're going to take a different avenue and look at Speaker Say's personal life and family life. I'm your host, Dina Palma-Barnes, and thank you for joining us today, Speaker.
Thank you very much once more, Dina, for inviting me and interviewing me.
All right, so let's start with your wife, Cora.
Yes. Well, the first time I met my wife, Cora, you would not believe it, was in the mid-70s and early 80s, and it was on the 4th floor that we are on. She went to visit her girlfriends who are working for Representative Ken Kiabo, who was a tourism chair, and Ken Kiabo had all these lovely girls, and they were the sorority known as BBGs, Beta Beta Gamma. And one evening I got to meet Cora, and somehow we just hit it off that I would meet with her after work at her girlfriend's house or one of our friends' house just to chit-chat and have a beer or a glass of wine. So, was it love by first sight? I would say maybe, but it's up to her to decide that.
Can you describe her personality?
Her personality is that she's a very articulate, very warm, very soft person. A person who is really committed in whatever she decides to do. I can still recall the days when we were both single and we were going out that she used to do a lot of aloha shirts and shorts for me. And on her label, it would just state, one of a kind. And, you know, it was so thoughtful of her that I could see why she became first a preschool teacher and then secondly an elementary school teacher, where she was a school teacher for about 33 years in the DOE. Prior to that, she worked as a preschool teacher at Waiokiola, which is a school close to the Kahala Mall. Getting back to Cora, you know, she's very dedicated, sometimes very passionate about not saying things that is on her mind. I've come to realize that she's very, very protective of her two sons, and she's very, very close to her mother and father. Probably because Cora, being the youngest of the family, the youngest daughter, with a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law, much older. But she went to Roosevelt High School, University of Hawaii, Puget Sound, and then graduated with her college degree in education. On a much more intimate note, she was very color coordinated because Calvin Say was never color coordinated. When I used to go out, you know, I had black pants with white socks, you know, yellow shirt, you know, and boy, what are you? You know, match your colors, your shirt and your pants. And she got me disciplined in really looking at that as far as one's appearance, as far as, you know, being a boyfriend or a husband today. And growing up from a private school, right, it was only white shirt with black tie and khaki pants. So Cora, I would say, is a person that is also very committed to whatever her endeavors are, which was public school teaching. She really cared about her students. She really cared about balancing her family time as far as teaching, along with taking care of the two boys. And, you know, when we started off our career, it was very difficult. Probably at age 2, Jeffrey was already going to preschool. And Cora, let me say this to the general public, started working as a school teacher out in Sunset Beach. Commuting from Pololo Valley to Sunset Beach really took a toll on both of us. And for me, you know, it was difficult because she would come home, have dinner. I wouldn't be home until maybe 8, 9 o'clock because of session. And then when the campaign started, she would leave at 5:30. I would leave at 5:30. And I'll be out on the road waving while she'd be commuting to Sunset. So, you know, giving you a chronology of her teaching from Sunset Beach to Kailupulu, which is in Enchanted Lakes, from Kailupulu to Kaluwela, which is another elementary school, on to Lanakila. But she has worked her way back into the system, meaning from the outskirts of the country back into the urban core city, where a lot of the old-time teachers really wanted to work because it was at their convenience living in East Honolulu.
Okay. What did she usually do for her summers?
Her summers, she used to go to summer school or teach summer school.
Okay.
But when the boys, you know, came into our lives, a lot of it was committed to basketball, baseball, volleyball, and soccer. And I can still recall the days when Jeffrey made this all-star team known as the Kaba, Continental Amateur Baseball Association of all-star players throughout the state that would go and visit the Midwest. Iowa, the Field of Dreams, they got to visit that place. I got to visit Oklahoma City, went up to Minnesota and other parts of the Midwest where the Continental Amateur Baseball Tournament was held every summer for about 5-6 years.
Okay.
You know, and as a mother, she was always trying to take care of the two boys. And sometimes, you know, she gave them the best. And I said, why don't we go to Goodwill and buy some clothes rather than going to these high-end, you know, stores. But that was her. She would sacrifice her resources for the two boys.
Did she have any hobbies?
Cara's hobbies was just like me. She used to run as far as the marathon. I ran 5 marathons. I used to take her to the beach a lot. I used to do a lot of diving with my classmates of high school and college. And that once a week on the weekends she would, you know, come out with us to go and sit on the beach and read while we went skin diving. Other exercises that she's done, she's gone to yoga. I've always told her that her exercise today is walking the 2 dogs. But her hobbies were also sewing, which I'm really, really happy.
That definitely helps out with your fashion and
Well,
mending your shirts and socks and all that stuff.
that she did a little because my mother-in-law did a lot for us and my father-in-law because she was teaching and she focused her whole life around teaching. The boys would always complain that mom would leave about 6:30 in the morning, come home at 6:37 in the evening. And it was Grandma Kotake and Grandpa Kotake that took care of the 2 boys. Grandma would take them to preschool or babysitter, pick them up, etc. Take them to Komong, take them to all these different activities that Cara had set up for the boys. Well, both she and I were focusing our attention on our careers. And that's the sacrifices I really appreciate the wife, you know, doing along with the in-laws.
Lucky that Grandma and Grandpa were around. That's
Yes.
good that they could help bring up the boys.
Yes.
So speaking of your boys,
Yes.
Jared and Jeffrey, why don't you tell us a little bit about them?
Well, Jeffrey is the oldest. He's 29 years old. Went to Iolani, got kicked out. Then he went to Mauna Loa. He played baseball. He made All-State as a midfielder, meaning second base or shortstop. Then he got a college scholarship to play at Hawaii Pacific University. So he was there for 5 years playing baseball for 4 years. He got his degree in criminal science, which I believe he's not using at this point in time, but it's okay at this young age. Jared was the one that was a hard worker. Being the second son, he always had a difficult time being in the, not the spotlight,
The shadows.
shadows of his older brother. But Jared developed himself into being a great golfer. He's a great, I would say, ukulele player along as a guitar and harmonica player. One of his favorite singers and authors as far as music and songwriting was not Arlo Guthrie, the other person, if you would think about it. He wrote a lot of songs, but the name will come back. Not Arlo Guthrie, but another one. But he used to play not piano, but the harmonica and the guitar. And Jared was also a very avid fisherman. Jared also played golf at Mid-Pacific Institute where he graduated. And today he's 27, whereby he graduated from Long Beach State with a bachelor's in business management and finance. And presently he's working for an insurance company as a claims adjuster.
Okay.
Do both of them have girlfriends? I said, I don't know, but it's up to them if they do, and they don't want to share it with the parents.
That's usually how it goes.
I see. Okay.
I'm sure they'll introduce you to the one that they decide to stay with.
Someday, yes.
What is Jeffrey doing now?
Jeffrey is doing things that he wants to do. He said he has a magazine shop, and I said, great. But at this stage in his life, he has to go out and really search as far as what he wants to really do in life, to contribute in life. And sometimes I share with them the philosophy that community service is a great, vocation or occupation for them to consider. Maybe working for the state or county, but more importantly, giving back to the community, the people who have brought you up to the degree of what you are today. Yes.
Do you see any of them following in your footsteps in politics?
Following in my footsteps, my answer to you at this point, talking to the two of them, would be no. And why? They have always felt that Daddy could have made much more money outside in the private sector rather than being in public office. And you know, it is true that it is a personal sacrifice, sometimes a financial sacrifice for a lot of my colleagues. But in the end, at the end of the day, I've really enjoyed public service of bringing people together and trying to resolve problems or issues that families may have. And you know, having that right connection in finding that particular county or state agency in addressing a family's problem, that's what I enjoy. Because at the end of the day, if the problem is resolved, both parties are happy. So will they follow my footsteps? My answer to you would be no, because it's a difficult path and career for them to consider, knowing that Dad is out by 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, sign waving in June, all the way to November, and walking house to house in the afternoons from 3:30 to about 7:30, and then weekends walking 5 to 6 hours a day. And that, you know, has really affected my thinking as a father and a husband, as far as have I given back to my family, the two sons and my wife, who were the ones patient on the side, letting their father and their husband go on his career. And it's just like Cora, her career as a school teacher. So would they consider it? Earlier I said no, and I truly believe the answer is no, because it's a lot of hard work, a lot of lonely times by yourself too. They used to come out and help me hold sign, you know, and we hold sign from 3:30 to 5:30 in the afternoons. After a half an hour, they're telling the mother, "Let's go home, it's too hot," waving in the sun. And that's true. But that's a sacrifice as a candidate and as an elected official you'll have to make. And that's the beauty of Hawaii, is sign waving and walking house to house, which is canvassing the district.
What are some of the what are some activities that you and your family do together?
Some of the activities, Jeffrey and Jared has always invited me to go to Bikram hot yoga.
Really?
And I've gone about a dozen times, which I've enjoyed because it really sweats out the toxins. And they always wanted me to golf, but being a left-hander, I could never take up the game of golf. My father-in-law, when I first got married, was, you know, very generous in buying me a set of golf clubs, but it was for right-handers. So I had to learn the hard way. And throughout my political career, no, I haven't gotten involved in golf. I enjoy walking the district. The boys enjoy golfing, playing basketball at the parks. And for me, at this point in my life, it's more activity that is much more passive rather than more active, because of my joints and my overall body structure.
Where do you practice Bikram yoga?
The one on Emmett's Highway, the second floor.
Ah, okay, I know that studio.
Okay. And sometimes, you know, I tell Cara and the two boys, "Boy, got some beautiful women there," and they're saying to themselves, "What is this old man, you know, doing this yoga?" You know, and they don't realize that my two sons are in front of me, right? And you know, it's interesting how people come up to you and say, "Aren't you the representative?" I say, "Yeah." "And you take Bikram hot yoga?" I said, "Yeah." But I don't tell them I'm with my two sons, right? They're dragging me along. And these are things that I really enjoy. But I also enjoy walking the district. And that's how I try to get my exercise in the weekends. Weekdays, I think, you know, you've come to realize how our time spent here at the Capitol is so important. You know, not just 8 to 10 hours, maybe 12 to 14 hours a day. And for those who have responsibilities, much longer. So balancing it all, I wanted to say thank you to my wife and my two sons, my parents and my in-laws, and my whole family, to just say thank you for the opportunity and the privilege of supporting me throughout my career.
It's very, I'm sure they appreciate the example that you've set for them, and realize the hard work that you've put in.
I hope so. But sometimes today, this generation is totally different based on the fact that they're just looking at more material wealth rather than the emotional satisfaction, the affective side, the value side. And that's where, you know, I'm trying to get that message across to my two sons.
Actually, that's a great segue into the next question I had. Can you talk a little bit about your religion? I know you're a very spiritual person.
Well, I've been very fortunate, very privileged, very lucky to have met so many people throughout my lifespan. When I was growing up, I was telling the story that at Palolo Elementary School, adjacent to the school, was a small sundry store. And this young lady, we called her Mary, would always give us candy. And then we would have to go to her catechism classes, only for an hour. But that was the motivational factor in getting the students. Then I got to experience what it was from my grandparents' side. You know, like I shared earlier, going to Kauai, learning about the spirituality of the land and the Hawaiian religion, the values, the Amakua, etc. Then Mom, my mother, being of Chinese ancestry, she got involved with the Jehovah's Witness. And then my father, who was more on the Buddhist side, you know, never did care, but the spirituality in every one of us is something that I've really enjoyed. And some of the stories or reports that I've read, stories like a book done by Nana Viri, Change We Must, the spirituality of one individual, going full circle and looking at religion. And what it really boils down to is the relationship between the higher being, which is Christ, and the individual. I think Christ, Buddha, anyone that you have a name for as the higher being or the Lord, does not really care about religion, but the relationship. And I was very lucky to have met a lot of Hawaiian living treasures. Some of them, like Iolani Luahini, she was the Hawaiian authoress in hula. She was number one. That was her religion, the hula, in communicating with the higher being. Pilahi Paki, I was very fortunate when I was culture in the arts chair. She brought to me and she taught me and she wanted me to experience what is the Aloha spirit. And when she speaks with a very soft tongue, it's because of the Aloha spirit. And when she tells you that, Calvin, when you look at Dina, do not look at Dina on the exterior, but the interior, your spiritual being. That when they come to your home and you have some food, share that with that person, even though you may not know the person, but the spirituality of that person is conveyed into you. And that's how the philosophy I was brought up with, sharing. I'll give you a great example. One time we went diving, Jeffrey, Danny Bauer, and I, at Makapu. And during that period, it was the Hawaiian Renaissance, and one of our good friends who now has a encampment in Waimanalo, Bumpy Kanahele, had his tents. So we caught 3 big taco that particular afternoon, or what we call octopus. Brought it back, and Mr. Kanahele with his binoculars looking out, seeing the 3 of us. One young man, Danny, Jeffrey, and myself. As we were approaching the shoreline, I told Jeffrey, with this taco or this octopus, could you share it with Mr. Kanahele? Jeffrey at first said, no. I said, you share it with him, because whatever you harvest in the ocean, you always share with everyone. Okay? If you want my taco, I told Jeffrey, you could have it, and one could be for Danny. Okay? So give it to him, and he went up to the shoreline, up to the tents, and Mr. Kanahele told Jeffrey the story about, is that your father? Jeffrey said, yes. I know your father. That's the representative, say. Tell him Bumpy said thank you very much. These small little things adds up. Spirituality with another good friend of mine who has since passed away, Brother Walter Kamana, who was in charge of a coastal area of Waianae Nanakuli, where he could communicate with our animals of the sea, the sharks, the porpoises, the dolphins, the fish, and he was in charge of the Ko'olina area, which is Campbell Estate. And you know, my auntie Lucy, who is of Hawaiian ancestry, we went hiking with my cousins and auntie on the Kalalau or Napali coast. And one time when we were coming back and somebody was saying something, and lo and behold, a ball of wind just swirls all around us. and then Auntie Lucy's talking to the Obolo. And these things, as far as what you experience is part of that spirituality that I've also, experienced, like I shared with you earlier, what Kung Kung used to do. My grandfather, as a taxi driver, when he picked up Madam Peli on Kuhio Highway, going to Haiena from Hanalei to notify the families of the tidal wave alert. That's the kind of stuff I said, wow, chicken skin, huh? But getting back to religion, I believe in all religions. And I respect all religions. And those individuals who are members and followers of that particular religion. Sometimes, you tell yourself, which one is the right religion? And at the end of the day, if you can really understand and respect each and every one of our religions and their culture, I think America, the world would be a better place. Like even in the old European histories, right? The Crusade, it was based on religion. The war in the Middle East, the Muslims. If we have some idea of what Allah is trying to say, what is Christ is trying to say, what is Confucius is trying to say, that's the key that we all have to come together. And this is where I think Hawaii has played a major part. There are a lot of religious sects here throughout the state, and I'm just overwhelmed with the spirituality. Maybe it's because of the islands, from Kauai to the Big Island, but those are just some of my feelings about spirituality, of respecting a higher being. And you need to, because I told you the other story in the past, when I'm holding a sign and somebody gives you the finger or thumbs down, you're asking Christ, can you have, prop me up, let's forgive them, etc. You've got to talk to some higher being, because you don't want to have it dwell in yourself, and it becomes a part of your system where it eats you up, and you ask for forgiveness, and then you move on. So that's how I look at things in that perspective. And every member of the House and Senate has that spirituality within them. It's how they use it and how they harness it for the greater good.
Is there any organized religion or church that you're part of that you like to go to? Well,
presently right now, I've been going to a church right across my home on Pololo on 10th Avenue, which is the Good Samaritan, which is an Episcopalian church. Okay. And that's where I'll try to find the values and their beliefs on issues that are permanent today. So Pastor Koyama and Pastor Okano, all these others, I've just trying to find my way of determining how to, as a elected official, do I vote on particular issues. Because I need to have that on top of public testimony that we do receive, right? Because no matter how you look at the issues, you're going to have an opponent and a proponent. And you did not run for office to hurt people, but to do what is the right thing for the greater good. So this church I'm attending right now.
Great. We're almost done. I just wanted to ask you one more question.
Yes.
It comes in everybody's lifetime. There comes a time where you retire, and
Yes.
are there any goals or around the world trips or anything like that that you have planned for when you retire? What do you look forward to doing when you retire?
That's a very interesting question, and I've shared that with a lot of members. That the day I retire is a day that I move on to another journey, another path of providing more public service. I could also get other jobs, right, which is making money, but at this point, I've come to realize that material wealth is not the answer to your sustainability. It's more of the thought of giving back what you've taken. And I look at myself volunteering a lot. I would love to help the nonprofits out there in educating them about the legislative process. How about going and drafting a bill like you went through? How about applying for a grant and aid for a purchase of service project or service? Having them understand the legislative process, which sometimes as an outsider looking in is so cumbersome, so complex, but once you get a handle of it, Dina, I think you become much more appreciative of how open and democratic we, the state of Hawaii, and the legislature is. We do have internal rules, we do have House and Senate rules that prohibit us from doing things that is not good for the greater good of the general public. And getting back to that last question, yes, I like to do a lot more in public service, but on a pro bono basis rather than requesting that I get paid for this or that. Because in the end, if I was to get compensated for something, I'll just rather give it to charity. And that's the approach I would like to take as far as what I'd like to do after I retire. And spend more time with the wife and the 2 sons.
Well, thank you so much, Speaker. Being a student of one of yours, I'm
Yes.
sure anybody that gets any bit of lessons or education from you are very, very fortunate. So,
Thank you.
So you've got,
And maybe I'll go back to my career as a school teacher, right, at the secondary level. You know, and educating them about politics 101, Hawaii state government, whatever it is as far as the core course, I'll be happy to, be a guest lecturer, a speaker, etc.
well, you certainly have a lot of wisdom to pass in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll join us for our next and last segment, which will be the legacy segment of our 6-part series. See you next time. Mahalo.